3 questions. Number 1, how many of you thinking back over the last 2 years of your life, 3 years of your life would say that demand has significantly increased? How many would say that? Okay. For some reason over here on this side, demand hasn't increased. They probably put that group over there for. How many of you, knowing that demand has increased significantly over the last several years, nonetheless believe that as you go forward, the demand is going to get still greater? Okay, so that's almost everybody. So here's a $64,000 question. How many of you would say that demand already having increased significantly for most of you, you expect it to keep increasing, given that your capacity to meet that demand will rise right along with the demand? Now, why isn't that alarming? Why isn't that alarming? I mean, when you think about it, it ought to be, oughtn't it? The answer is that we take capacity for granted. We make an assumption that whatever the demand on us is, we'll have the capacity to meet it, because for hundreds of years, that's the way it's worked. We've had more capacity than we have demand. And so what we've ended up doing is we've ended up taking it for granted. We assume there's always going to be more there where that came from. It's exactly what we've done with the environment. We've made an assumption that where the natural resources are infinite, and we treat them as if they're infinite, and all of a sudden, when it comes to the external environment, we've discovered that maybe they're not infinite. We haven't yet made really significant behavioral changes given that, but we've started to realize that. We haven't started to take stock of that in our own lives. We really haven't taken that seriously. And the truth is that capacity is not infinite, and that, to the contrary, the only resources that last, whether it's in the world at large and the planet or inside us, are those we renew. But I said inside us. I said inside us because these resources that we need to be able to bring ourselves fully to whatever we're doing every day are inside us. And the inside of us turns out to be the area that we have spent very, very little time and energy exploring. It's terra incognita, isn't it? It's this vast, unexplored territory. What actually happens inside us, what makes us work, how we work, we don't know much about. Now, we do know that we don't have, that most of you, I would suspect, are feeling pretty pressed, feeling pretty overwhelmed by the set of demands that you have in your life. And there's several reasons for that. You know, there's technology, there's the recession, and the fact that companies downsized, and so there's more to do in less time. There's, if you're like me, the people who are going to pay you less or make it harder for you to earn. You're playing more roles, or we all are playing more roles in our lives than we did. So there's all this going on, and we keep relying on the same external resource that we always have in order to meet rising demand. So when you have more to do, what do you invest more of? You can say it. Time, right? So there's more to do. I'll work later in the evening. Except there is a problem with time, isn't there? It's this. It's that time is finite. Time is finite. You've got 168 hours in your week. You are never going to have another hour, no matter what happens. No congressional legislation is going to change that. And to make things worse, your dance cards are already full, aren't they? You don't have any free time as it is. In fact, what we know about investing more time is that when you get past a certain number of hours, and this is so true in the creative professions. I spent 25 years as a writer before I started doing this, so I really know and appreciate the world of the creative person. When you put in more than a certain number of hours, you begin to get diminishing returns on each incremental hour you invest. And in fact, when you get to enough hours, when you're under enough pressure, when you're pushing the envelope particularly hard, when you're burning the midnight oil, all the cliches that apply to this, you actually eventually get collateral damage. Actually, time turns against you. So time is outside you. It's moving past you like a train going off into the distance. And once it's gone forever. So that's not a very usable resource when you've already used the available hours. We've got to turn to an internal resource if we're going to be able to meet not only the quantity of demands that we face, but the complexity of demands that we face in the years ahead. And fortunately, there is an answer to that. It's just one we haven't spent much time cultivating, thinking about, understanding, because again, it's inside us, and that has made it invisible to us, particularly so long as it didn't seem to be necessary. That resource is energy. Energy. Because there are three things about energy, beside the fact that it's inside you, so therefore you have the power to influence it in a way you don't have the power to influence time. There are three things about energy that are really exciting and powerful. Number one, you can actively cultivate and build more energy. You can make more energy available to you than you now have. Now, technically in physics, they tell us you can't do that. But in fact, they do also say in physics that you can convert one form of energy into another form of energy. So what you eat may be a better or worse source of energy to you than something else you eat. And whether or not your ability to transport oxygen through your body is good, you can have more energy available to you. So you can expand your energy, you also can renew your energy. You can refuel your energy. Just like a car, you can put more gas in it when it starts to burn down. So can you put more fuel into yourself. And then the third thing about energy that's exciting is that you can learn to manage your energy more skillfully or more efficiently. In fact, when you really learn to manage your energy well, you can get more done in less time at a higher level of quality more sustainably. That's pretty cool. That gives you a whole resource that you didn't know that you had. But then we have to say, well, what is energy? What is energy? And actually, let's go to the physics definition. So the definition of energy is it's the capacity to do work. Isn't that interesting? So I started out talking about capacity. Here we are right back there again. In other words, if you have more energy, you have more capacity. So if I can, even in this very short time I have, introduce you to the idea that you're in charge of building your own energy, then you will have more capacity. Capacity is the fuel in your tank. It's what it takes. And here's the critical thing, because there's no person in this audience who isn't sitting here with both a lot of creative talent and a lot of history of executing against that talent. But if you have an empty tank, if you don't have fuel in that tank, you cannot bring that considerable skill and talent you have to life, and every person here knows what I'm talking about. Those instances, more of them today than 10 years ago, where you are simply not able to bring it to the table. So energy is the capacity to do work. It actually turns out, I'm not going to belabor this right now, but very quickly I'll just say there are 4 sources of energy in a human being. There's physical energy. That's the quantity of your energy. That's a key one. That's the foundation on which all the other sources of energy rest. So if you have a weak foundation, then you are not going to be able to support the other sources of energy. Then there's the quality of your energy, which is emotional, because how you feel profoundly affects how you perform. It profoundly affects how you create. And it turns out there's only a certain way you can feel and perform at your best. You want to know what that is? It's how you feel when you're performing at your best. Think about that for a moment. How do I feel when I'm performing at my best? Those emotions that come to mind, those adjectives that come to mind will be exclusively high energy adjectives and qualitatively high adjectives, qualitatively high words or emotions. So that's the way that you need to feel to perform at your best. But of course you don't feel that way a significant amount of the time. And we assume that we don't have control over that, that somehow how we feel is a function of what happens to us, of what's going on in the environment. I'm here to say to you that my experience is you can actively cultivate the emotions that serve you best just as systematically as you can build a bicep or a tricep. So that's the second form. The third form of energy is mental energy. That's the focus of your energy. That's the one that is most at risk in the world right now because your attention is under siege, isn't it? How many people are tweeting right now? How many people are checking their email? How many people? You don't have to say it. You don't have to say it. But what's happened is our attention is under siege. It's being attacked from every angle. It's being called on from every angle. And that would be okay, except The most powerful way to get things done at a high level of quality and in an efficient way is to do one thing at a time in an absorbed way for a significant period of time. All of us are struggling with that. It's inevitable in the world we live in. And the final source of energy you need is spiritual energy, or the energy of the human spirit. That's the energy you derive from the experience that what you do really matters. It's what Simon was talking about. It's the sense that you're serving something bigger than your immediate self-interest. Because when you think what you do really matters, you bring more energy to it. So there you have it: quantity, quality, focus, and purpose. Those are the four sources of energy you need to operate at your best. Now, we're in all kinds of trouble right now because we've got a paradigm that isn't working. The way we're working isn't working. And the reason it isn't working is because of this disconnect between demand and capacity. And it's premised in several myths that we continue to live by that are obsolete and are getting in our way. I want to share those with you in the brief time I have left. So the first myth is that the best way to get more work done is to work more hours. That seems logical. Time, more time, more time. Bigger, more, bigger, faster. That message has been around since the launch of the Industrial Revolution. But here's the reality. We are not meant to work continuously, and we're not most effective when we do. And the better way to work is to build in intermittent renewal along the way. Why? Why? Why does it make sense to build in intermittent renewal? Because we aren't meant to operate the same way that our digital devices do. At high speeds, continuously, for long periods of time, running multiple programs at the same time. And when we try to mimic the digital devices in our lives, they end up running us. Because in reality, human beings, physiologically, are designed to pulse. We're designed to move between spending energy and renewing energy in a rhythmic way. Every system in our body operates best when you are moving between spending and renewing energy, when you pulse. Your brain waves between high-frequency electrical activity and low-frequency electrical activity, so you move from high attention to sleep. Your heart waves or pulses, and when it gets flat, you're not doing so well. Your muscles contract and relax. Your digestive system pulses. Every system in the body pulses when it's operating well. But we live linear lives. We live the life of continuous expenditure of energy, go, 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 till we drop. We are violating the internal rhythm of our body at our own peril. It doesn't work. And here's what we do to make it work. I try to keep my coffee buzz going till the martini buzz kicks in. Because we have to renew. We must renew. We are designed to renew, and if we don't naturally renew, we will look for artificial ways to renew ourselves. So we'll drink coffee in the morning to get ourselves up when we've had too little sleep, and we'll work our asses off all day long and go home, and we'll be exhausted physically, but we'll be mentally and emotionally wired, so we'll have a martini or 2 martinis or 3 martinis to cool back down. And sure enough, it works, and then, it gets to be about 8:30 or 9:30, and the night before you were too upset to sleep, but sure enough, with 3 glasses of wine, you fall asleep on the couch at 9:30, just like you want to do so you can get some recovery. But there's one problem, which is that alcohol is a short-term stimulant, a short-term narcotic. It will bring you down, it will put you to sleep, but it's a long-term stimulant. So now it gets to be 2 or 3 in the morning, and all of a sudden you wake up, the alcohol wakes you up. And you start to ruminate about all the things you have to do tomorrow, and you can't fall back asleep. So what do? You get up, you go into the bathroom, you grab from your medicine chest an Ambien, and you take that Ambien, and sure enough, 30 minutes later, at 3:30 in the morning, you're back asleep. The problem is the Ambien has a 5-hour half-life, and you've got to get up at 6. So you only got 3 hours, you get up, you're feeling completely exhausted, and what do? You have coffee. Welcome to your life. So what we need to do is we need to ennoble the idea of real renewal. We need to bring back, right now, if you were to talk in your workspace, or even for the many of you who work on your own and are actually your own bosses, if you start to think about rest, if you start to think about renewal, if you start to think about stopping, what it means to you, most of us, is slacking. I'm not doing what I should be doing, or somebody's telling me I'm not doing what I should be doing. So we tend to disparage, we tend to demean, we tend to look down upon renewal. It's not something that's serving us well. Nonsense. We learned this, I learned this, and my then partners learned this from our many years of work in the 1970s and 80s with professional athletes. And we were trying to help athletes who were tremendous in terms of their skill and talent, were tremendous, but for some reason weren't performing well. And they came to us when they'd exhausted all other options. And we were looking for a way to help them that didn't address their actual skill and talent. It addressed something that was going on inside them, mentally, emotionally, sometimes physically. And what athletes understand, what every great athlete understands, is the concept of work-rest ratios, of managing work-rest ratios, which is called periodization. It's the recognition that the renewal and recovery of energy are as important to your success, to your performance, as the spending of energy. So we need to ennoble renewal as one of the key aspects of being able to be sustainably effective in the lives we lead, not only at work, but off of work. So that's the first myth we want to scream at. The rhythm you want to find is a rhythm called the ultradian rhythm. So the ultradian rhythm is a rhythm inside your body. Most of us are not aware of it. You are aware that you sleep in cycles. And at night, you sleep in a cycle of 5 different stages of sleep, and that sleep cycle is called the basic rest activity cycle. It runs 90 minutes. Most of you are aware on some level that that exists. Very few of us are aware of a second cycle that is exactly parallel and recapitulates this nighttime cycle during the day. And what happens there is you move from a state of high arousal at the beginning of a period of energy expenditure, and then over the next 90 minutes, you slowly fall down into a physiological trough. You're headed there right now. And it's not really my fault. I hope. But you're headed there. You know, it doesn't matter how good I am. If I kept going much past what I will, I'd lose you, or I'd lose you partially. So this ultradian rhythm is something we override in our lives. We override it with coffee. We override it with sugar. But the number one thing we override it with is our own body's natural speed, our stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. We use this emergency source of energy, which is critical to have in certain situations, such as a lion coming at you. It's good to have that cortisol so you get the hell out or you kill the lion. But we use it the same way we would use one of those small spare tires stupidly, where you have, you can't fit the full-size spare tire, you have a flat tire, you put that tire on, and now you drive another 500 miles at 80 miles an hour. That's like having cortisol circulating in your body. It doesn't serve you well. If you align with this rhythm, you change your life. I've been aligning with this rhythm for 10 years now. It has completely transformed my life. When I'm working, I'm really working. But I recover and renew in between times. In fact, it turns out we know from athletes that it's not how long you renew, it's how well you renew. So I'm not saying to you, you need to work 90 minutes and then take 90 minutes off. And that wouldn't sell very well in the companies we go and try and work in anyway. I'm saying to you that fitness is defined as the speed of recovery. The fitter you are, the faster you recover. So if you are good at fitness, you recover. If you are really fit, you recover faster. So the key to that is that you make recovery or renewal important, because the more you practice renewal, the more you practice recovery, just like any other muscle, the better you get at it. And the quicker it occurs. That's not just true physically, that's true emotionally. That's called resilience emotionally. So resilience is the ability to recover quickly from a hit to your sense of well-being. And the more emotionally fit you are, the quicker you do recover and the more effective you can be. So the second myth is connected to the first in the sense that it is also about the management of energy, is that 1 hour less of sleep will lead to 1 hour more of productivity. You know that one. because you do it. But even small amounts of sleep in reality, even small amounts of sleep deprivation have a profound impact not only on your health, but on our cognitive capacity and therefore on our effectiveness. Even small amounts of sleep. There is no single more critical, fundamental message to share with you today than that sleep is the most important behavior in your life to get right, and it's the first one we get wrong. Why do I say it's the first one we get wrong? Well, first of all, what we know from a study by a guy named Alan Rechtschaffen at the University of Chicago, who went and did this experiment with rats, because as you'll see, you can't really do it with human beings, is he decided to deprive rats of sleep over an unlimited period of time to see what happens. And what happened are all those things you see right there, progressively, so that they were dead between the 17th and the 21st day from a lack of sleep. Now, he did that experiment a second time, and this time he deprived them of food. How do you think those rats were doing at the end of 17 days? I'll tell you, they were hungry, but they were fine. Sleep is more important than eating. Do we treat it that way? No. So how much sleep do you need? How much sleep do you need? Well, this is astonishing. Technically, we know from the experiments that are done usually in bunkers with no clocks and no windows that you need 7 to 8 hours of sleep in order to feel fully rested. So when they do those experiments, 95% of all subjects are not fully rested. And how do you know that they're fully rested? You ask them to sleep as long as they'd like to sleep, whenever they'd like to sleep. And they don't have any natural light, and they don't have any clocks, so they do it whatever they need. And now we find that it's on average 7 to 8 hours of sleep. What percent? 95%. But another 2.5% need more than 7 to 8 hours. So 97.5% of us need a minimum of 7 hours a night to feel fully rested, and if we don't get it, we'll have significant cognitive deficit. How many people? So that means in this room of 378 people, there are 15 people who do not need 7 hours of sleep a night. How many of you did not get 7 hours of sleep every night last week? I rest my case. But that's huge. The impact of that is so huge, and we misunderstand it because, as David Dingus, another great sleep researcher from the University of Pennsylvania, says, we have lost sight of what it feels like to be fully rested. We are so deeply sleep deprived that we're like the person who stopped after 3 glasses of wine by the cop on the highway, pulled out, told to walk a straight line, walks like this, and thinks that he's fine. We think we're fine. We're not. We're not fine. In fact, if you went 4 nights in a row at any point during the last year and got 5 or fewer average hours of sleep, you would have the same cognitive capacity as someone who is intoxicated. If I asked you if you go to work occasionally intoxicated, I hope the answer is you think no. But you do. If you've done this. How many people in the room have had 4, 5 or fewer hours of sleep 4 nights in a row at least one time during the last year? So amazing, isn't it? This is pretty critical. Third myth. It's not the number of tasks we're capable of juggling simultaneously that determines how productive we are, even though that's the way we treat our lives now. We call it multitasking. It isn't multitasking. It's task shifting because the brain can't do 2 things at the same time. So it moves quickly from one activity to another activity. And we think that's the way we need to pay attention in order to get all these things done in our lives that are there. Or if we don't feel we need to, we addictively are drawn to doing that because there are so many calls on our attention right now that pull at us in the same Pavlovian way that a piece of chocolate cake fresh out of the oven would, that we effectively find it almost impossible to pay absorbed attention in the face of all the things that are going on around us. But the reality, as I think I might have said earlier, is that we are most efficient when we do one thing at a time in an absorbed way. Wow. Just take a deep breath on that one. Because we don't do that, do we? And in fact, there's a number of you who've resisted checking your email since I started, who are starting to get the cold shivers from withdrawal. because literally it hits the same centers, the same dopamine centers in the brain when you answer email as when you snort cocaine. It's an addictive pull. So the problem is that our technology has gotten way, way out ahead of our ability to manage it skillfully. That's what we're facing. The technology is incredible now. But we haven't made a parallel move forward in how to manage it in a way that serves us as well as it could. Because it does serve us well. And I'm not a Luddite, and I'm not suggesting we're going to throw away our technology. Whatever has come about is here forever. So the only question we have is, how do we adjust to make better use of it? And what we're doing now is we are doing more and more and more and more things, but we are investing less and less and less attention in each of the things we do, because we're splitting our attention over the period of 5 minutes or 15 minutes or an hour between so many things. So in effect, what we're saying is we're partially engaged in a lot of things, and we're almost never fully engaged in anything. That doesn't serve us well. It serves this audience least well of any audience I can imagine speaking to. Because you know that creatively, one of the most beautiful feelings is to fall into that deeply absorbed, right hemisphere-dominated state where you are no longer troubled by the thinking part of your left hemisphere. It's the nature of someone who is in the business of the visual arts. And so to interfere with that is to interfere with your very livelihood. And yet, you do it every day. Now, interestingly, this gentleman, Herbert Simon, who won the Nobel Prize, is in the 1970s, long before there was even an internet, saw the future so clearly. What information consumes, he said, is rather obvious. It consumes the attention of its recipients. Hence, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. Do you have any doubt that that's the case? Do you know that in your own life? That's what we're fighting, a poverty of attention. And attention is energy, is effectiveness. They're all of the same ilk. So the problem that we have is that instead of multitasking, what we do is we switch between activities. So you switch very quickly from one activity to another. But let's imagine that you are looking at your computer and you are working on a very difficult problem. And you know that anything that you can possibly do to get away from that problem will be extremely attractive to you. Because human beings have two core impulses in life. Number one, escape pain. Number two, move toward pleasure. That's where we live. So now along comes the ping of that email, and that email is saying to you, freedom, I'm free at last. And you go to that email because it takes you away from the pain of doing something more difficult and more complex. And it promises you a potential pleasure. It rarely delivers. It rarely delivers, but hope springs eternal, and it gets locked into the brain, and back and forth you go. And the problem is that if you make that move, on average, you are increasing the amount of time it will take to finish a task by an average of 25% every time you move from that primary activity to another one. It's not only affecting the quality of what you do, it's affecting the efficiency and speed with which you do it. That's crazy. There is science that underlies, I call it the science of high performance, that underlies how we need to live. And just quickly thinking of these, if you can, what's the longest you've gone without checking email during your waking hours in the last month? When was the last time you took an hour or two out of your day intentionally to think creatively without interruption, without a specific goal in mind? Or how often do you sit back and just take 30 seconds to breathe deep? We don't do these things, and they're the most important things you can do for the work you do. And we've got to build them back into our life. We've got to make this shift. Right now, we're operating as if we're in a marathon. A marathon, when you're in a marathon, what you do is you don't have an end in sight, and so what you do is you pace yourself along the way, and even if you're not aware of it, you're actually not expending all your energy. It feels like you're sprinting, but you're not really. And you're never really fully engaged because you're pacing yourself. If you didn't, you'd drop like a stone. But what does a sprinter do? This is the metaphor I want to leave you with this afternoon. What does a sprinter do? A sprinter walks up to the line, looks down the track, says, can I run for 100 yards, 200 yards, 400 yards at full out pace? Can I fully engage in this activity for its entirety? And the sprinter says, yes, I can. Why? Because the sprinter recognizes a stopping point. The sprinter recognizes the power of renewal. The sprinter has a boundary. The sprinter has a finish line. You've lost your finish lines. You need to take your finish lines back. You need to find a nice balance between spending energy and recovering energy. So when you're engaged, you're fully engaged. And when you are recovering and renewing, you are truly renewing, and you stop living in the gray zone in between. You take back your life because it belongs to you. Thank you.